imposter syndrome and looking at whether it is in fact imposter syndrome and what we can do more importantly to go forward and conquer with strength and just own our space and whatever it is that we want on board and go forward. Some of you may have experienced feelings of imposter syndrome, and I would love to know, those of you that got your mics off, if you've ever experienced it. I'm going to go round by one, but I want you to be thinking, if you are on this talk, if you've ever had a moment yourself, or you know a client who's ever had a moment themselves where they've either second guessed themselves or they've thought that maybe they don't deserve to be there, or they shouldn't speak up in a meeting because they have to say is probably not of value. Or maybe you've been writing a program for a client and you think, oh, it's not good enough. I don't have the right information. Those types of things. And or the other one might even be procrastinating over something, because that perfectionism and putting something off, and then almost that self-sabotage of it wasn't enough because I didn't do enough prep. And on the other side of that, it could be over prepping. I definitely find myself doing a lot of over prepping and then thinking much and second guessing it. And I know that a lot of students have expressed those feelings when delivering sessions with clients. So we're joined today with Jasmine, and we've just got somebody else coming through. And we have Orla, who's going to be sharing her perspectives, who's group exercise extraordinaire, an absolute whip. And we've got Sabrina, who is going to get perspective today. We've got Karen Prato, who has her own Pilates studio. Jasmine runs her own personal training studio as well, and is just absolutely smashing it. Hello, welcome down there. Could I ask a moment, if you don't mind, just turning your camera off, just got those people that are answering those questions. And I'm going to start off with, I'm going to go over to Gina because she's just turned a microphone off, and then she'll have to turn it back on again. Gina, have you ever experienced any of or a client that you're aware of?
Yeah, sorry, I was just telling my boyfriend to stop washing the dishes because he's being too noisy. And that's why I turned the microphone off. So yeah, absolutely. So in both extremes, I'm a manager, a senior manager in Imposter. So you're up against a lot of different managers, and you've got to put your case forward for purchasing equipment or selling business. But through group exercise, definitely the most, because you always compare yourself to somebody else who might be doing type of program as you or something like that. But you also, I think part of it is also you want to give your clients the best experience as well. So you want to make yourself to be I don't know, like not like an imposter up even more in front of them, and to deliver something to them that they're going to love and keep coming back, week in, week out, and tell them stuff. So yeah, and I still struggle with it now. Like I've got my hard group that come to my classes, but yeah, what was that imposter syndrome there?
Thank you for that. So with that, kind of sort of mentioned the perfectionism, the best, or are you good enough, and also that comparison element, which is again really sort of useful to hear that in real time. I'm going to jump over because she hasn't got her mic on either.
She's still up, anybody?
I'm sitting on a gym board. Very comfy. Don't have chairs.
Oh, brilliant. Have you experienced yourself or any clients that have been through it?
Definitely. I came to fitness quite late. So I'd always been a participant and then decided to become a fitness instructor. And my self-sabotage was, I'm not fit enough to do this. I was 40 years old and everyone I was training with was so much younger. And yeah, nerves really got to me about that. Even though the written exams were all fine and the article, I became very unnerved about it because I was just I felt really unfit. compared to all of these like 19-year-olds who are just doing it because they might want to do this as part of their career. Whereas for me, it was really important. I think imposter syndrome is a form of protection, but it can be so it can really the things that you want, and you just need to give yourself permission to want those things, and it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing.
What I love about what you just shared there is you said feelings quite a few times. Nervousness or feelings of and definitely come back and sort of explore that a little bit more, those feelings, because well, when we think about what a feeling is, time we've got information going on that's that stimulus, but when that stimulus becomes important enough, or if it changes and that becomes important enough, we have this sort of what moment, which is a trigger, and at that moment you get a chemical change, your muscles change, and that trigger is an emotion. So you're emoted to move, that what moment that gets you in the chair. And with that moment, we then have about 6 seconds, or the brain has to go through this whole journey of basically looking at patterns and trying to get through past memories, through all of those things, whether this is an opportunity or whether it's a threat. And so that moment where the central nervous system is kind of assessing everything, it's got to take an action to it. And it's that action that's really important, whether we enforce it as a threat or an opportunity. And nerves is a super interesting one because for me, I went through drama school. So I saw a lot of people around me that seemed to be less than me. I felt like I was more nervous, comparison. But then you can also look at that as butterflies or excitement as well. So brilliant. Thank you for highlighting nervousness of feelings and those feelings of comparison. I'm going to jump over to Orla because she's got a mic off as well. That's the
Hi everyone. For me, I'm fine. Most of it was who told me how you're gonna become a personal trainer when you look kind of like this, like I have belly and like not the skinniest. So that was like how it kind of started. Like body shape, and I also had body shape just struggles, like eating disorders, past strength to relate to people, and I don't see it as an imposter anymore. At times, I see it more like previous traumas that she's so. Um, like that was an experience, like not knowing like the science behind what I'm doing, or do I sound like a guru on social media or like with my clients that I'm not comfortable in helping them, like something that I'm not able to like fix or take care of.
First of all, when it's awful of your doctor to body, I think that's just appalling, and I think we'll track that doctor down. So I'm sorry that
My mom too. It's okay. My mom is.
Your mum said that too.
She's not my doctor anymore, but my mom as well. So I'm kind of used to it.
Oh, it's difficult because yeah, sometimes mum say the right thing, a helpful thing. Sharing that, we'll definitely look into feelings and how they're reinforced and how that reinforcement of feelings starts to influence how you're experiencing it at that time. So thank you. Sabrina, you got your mic off. There you go.
Yes. So thank you, first of all, for inviting me to them.
Welcome.
What I actually was going to bring up is kind of similar to what all know very well, that nagging feeling or that belief that our accomplishments are due to luck or timing or deception, but not genuine skill. And I think that that's something that a lot of professionals also battle with, those whispers in your ear that make us question our worth and competence. So that's a part of imposter syndrome that I was going to elevate today as well. I recently worked with a client named Sarah. We're going to call her Sarah, but she's actually a very gifted energy healer, and she possessed a deep well of empathy and intuition. And her sessions often bring profound relief and healing to clients. But behind her confidence, it's all kind of a facade. She was plagued by doubt, and it was all linked to that inner feeling, or that she just wasn't competent enough, so to speak.
What were some of the things that she was able to do to help her overcome?
Worked with me, and that involved two approaches, which was go hypnosis, regret child, and then we reframe the definition of empathy. So that's something that everybody can do. You can redefine what empathy is, what empathy means, so that you're processing connection and understanding during the empathy can manifest. So that could include active listening, mirroring, support. And that's where she started to realize more of her ability to connect with her clients, to provide them with genuine relief and healing.
That's excellent.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And what's interesting when we look at the process that happens, that trigger, what we're saying with empathy is really at that point, and you get that cognition. What we're going to hopefully go into is trying to granulate what it is we are so if it's the same as pain, we could say it's sharp pain, it's acute pain, stretch pain, or it's an ache, and once you started to go longer pain, it's now it's now an ache. It's not sharp or daggering. And by doing that, you've taken the power out of that feeling. And by reframing it, it's become less of a danger and a threat, and more of an opportunity to, I can move through that. That's now, a feeling of stretch is not a danger. And how we other feelings that may be sort of holding us. Again, going back to what Jasmine said, nerves. If you've ever been on a date, you suddenly get that same feeling in your stomach, and you're like, oh, and they just say, and all of a sudden your whole stomach's alive in there. But because of the context of being out, the opportunity of meeting this new person and being present, that's now become excitement. And really, that's the same as nerves. But if we put nerves into sweating hands and feelings of not being worthy, that might be more of a situation that pulls you down and doesn't allow you to be to think of and naming what those feelings are. So nerve excitement, that type of thing can just start to change. Unprepped Imposter Syndrome, or whatever, if you like, because you mentioned Gina, skill, Sabrina, and that might be within the fitness industry. There's a lot of mixed information, and I think generally, Sabrina, in life there's a lot of mixed information now with social media, and that add to that confusion, or is somebody else, like you're saying, or a guru, and that might make us feel like we are less prepared or don't have the info at hand. But the great thing about that is if we address that it's skill, or having those tools, we can go and have a look at ways in which we can feel more confident in that scenario. Karen, have you got any experiences with your clients yourself? Welcome.
Honestly speaking, it wasn't until a few years ago that I hadn't even heard of imposter syndrome. I didn't even know it was a thing. In fact, I was on a convention, I think, and it was with female fitness trainers one, and I didn't even know. So some of the feelings that I've had, I didn't kind of put a label to it. I didn't think of anything. I just had to kind of either push through it, or or just kind of back off. But most of the time, I pushed through. I think I was much better at handling things, obviously, when I was in my 20s and 30s, well, 20s and early 30s. So I was, as I got older, I kind of tend to think about things a bit too much. But I still, one of the worst things for me, I think I remember, is I used to teach aerobics. I was a croupier and I was working in a different country, so I couldn't change my occupation. I spent many hours just going to classes after classes, and I just wanted to be on that stage. I didn't even know what it involved. And I just remember one day, the teacher was off sick, and they said, "Oh, can you teach it?" I mean, I knew inside out, and I just went up and did it. I didn't. Nobody was asking for qualifications. I didn't even realise. I could feel I was working to. Didn't realise you kind of had to do all the pre-queuing and. But anyway, everyone followed me, and it was great. And anyway, went to the UK, I had to change my job, and an aerobics teacher, and I went through it, but that's when I realised. I was feeling music, but I wasn't really hearing it, so my cueing, diabolical. And then I realized that I actually couldn't really hear all the changes in the music. But can't long short, I did work for it. I had a lot of tears, but I kept working for it. And I got through the exam and I was teaching for free here, there, and everywhere. And then actually, sorry, before I taught for free, I kind of lost bottles. So I guess that may have been Imposter Syndrome. And I was given a job at Ideal Homes selling steppers, and I had no fear at all about being in there doing the step-in, selling all the gear. But I'd lost my confidence to teach. And then somebody came around the corner, somebody who was at the exhibition, I recognised that voice anywhere. And it was somebody on the course. And she said, "Oh, how's the classes going and everything?" And I said, "Well, I taught." Like, but you're standing up here selling some crap that goes under your bed, and I had musical gear going on, but I couldn't teach. So I did teach in the end, and I kept working at it, and I just pushed through it. So that's just like one of my experiences, because I've had so many, but I didn't know it was an imposter syndrome. So that's my story.
That's a great little story there.
Well, it kind of is, because sometimes people think you just appear a good teacher. It's like Pilates and all those. I didn't just get there. It's journey for me, just like everyone else. You've had the knockbacks and all those things. You used to have to do auditions about that, and Gina just like slip in the back door. So
yeah. I remember one of my first auditions wearing grey leggings, and then I realised it made it look as though I'd wet myself. The nerves just all around the inside of my legs, and I was just, oh, never again.
It's not a good colour.
But I think now if everybody wants to put their cameras on, that would be great, and we could just be a bit more sort of the conversation. But some of the things that were coming across there is what other people have said to us and our perceptions of what other people say within that scenario, whether it's your mum, your doctor, whether that's social media, whether that is the way the world is. And I think that with it to fight for our voice, and it's important that we continue to fight for anybody that doesn't have their voice or doesn't get their voice heard. But every one of you really sort of looked at feelings that you had, ways in which you overcame them. So it seems to be that it's these feelings that we might all have. Maybe it's self-doubt, maybe it's that we haven't had the opportunity to have the tools to be able to do something. But I thought the other said, Karen, as well, is that when women get older, there seems to be an increased time of anxiety through going through the climacteric period. So as our hormones start to change, they're all over the place, and we're dealing with this new stage of life. It's kind of like puberty in reverse. So, and that's kind of like the first time that we ever thought, oh, am I good enough? All that sort of fight off. And I do hear a lot of my students and a lot of my clients saying that they just started to lose their confidence, or whereas maybe they might have got in the car and driven a long distance, worried about being a driver, those types of things. And I think particularly as women age, My mum was how, she worries because feel maybe she needs the bathroom, and all of a sudden that's her lose her confidence because she doesn't think she can be with her friends for long enough, and why are they able to sit there for long enough? But everything seems to come back to feelings, which always comes back to the information that's around us. And I think what's come across with everyone sharing their stories, how can we put a name to those that spin doctor to something more positive? Does anybody have any questions on anyone that's here at the moment? Lokia said, hey, great story.
I was just kind of thinking of my own, as you guys were talking about your story. It's just very relatable. I myself at a young age, after experiencing a lot of trauma, was diagnosed with anxiety disorders, perfectionism. And so when you, at the very beginning, were asking, have you ever felt this and this and this? And I'm like, I don't know if I could even narrow it down. It's just so, I think a lot of that's the perfectionism. Nothing I ever do is for myself, where I have my clients that tell me they love my sessions. I have my seniors after my class at the JCC literally lining up to tell me how much they love my class. My parents cannot stop telling me how proud they are of everything I've overcome and everything I've done to build a business. But I just constantly feel like nothing I do is good enough for myself. I always need to be doing more and pushing more, and and the over planning too. That one I can really relate to.
It's funny when you I put a research study into the group, so if you want to go in and have a little look at that afterwards. But I think now it might be quite good to look at some sort of strategies as well that take the sting out of those feelings. And I think that's, car, and you're driving along and someone cuts you up, and it gives me that what moment, and you almost want to go, stupid idiot, like this, and you want to express that, you get that rage inside. Maybe other people are a lot more calm. But you kind of think, how dare they? Or da da da. But it's all about you in that moment having that. You go, it's something I got from John Hardy from Faster Health and Fitness. And that is to use, I think he uses, I can't remember his name now, but I try and use Sarah Milligan, and Joe's very angry with this person who's just cut her up. In fact, pummel her head on the floor. And at the moment when I say, she wants to pummel her head on the floor, I'm going, that's quite an extreme reaction. Maybe I don't really want to pummel her head on the floor. And now I'll go, Joe's gift that somebody else is driving faster. But by saying that and using the silly voice, you can choose any silly voice you like, it seems to make it more, it takes the sting out of it, and no longer angry with that emotion. The emotion has gone, and I'm able to see it for what it is, and possibly that person was in a rush somewhere, or whatever it is. But if we can use those things, welcome Damaris, if we can use those things. There's a great book by Dr. Lisa Fielding Barrett, and she does some amazing, and she talks about trying to improve our emotional intelligence and granular. So if we look at anxiety, for example, anxiety can make quite a big umbrella, and it feels very, very, whereas we make that, granulate that and go that we are, I bet we could all come up with a different version of what anxiety is, or that feeling. So it could be underprepared. It could be sweaty, other version of what could be considered anxiety, but a feeling that might be a different way of labeling
like
it.
Palpitations and stuff like that.
Frantic, overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I love that, because that is so different. Palpitation. because all of a sudden, sorry, Karen, your palpitations were deflated. It didn't seem quite as, like that palpitations for some people might have different connotations of being more powerful. Whereas my brain's going now. Yeah, fractious. That's not a word. Now, fractious. What about a different word for
fight and flight mode as well? Sometimes got to almost like either fight past and rock up, and I've got to class, I've got to present a convention. It's like, oh, I'm not feeling too well today, I'm not gonna turn up. So it's that bit, that fight or flight, isn't it? Feeling sometimes with it as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, really, where the science comes in, physically, that, I've got to see a client, or I'm doing something, trigger, when you get that emotion, the chemical reaction, and then you've got like about 6 seconds where the brain goes on full cylinders on what's happened in the past experiences, the context. Are you in a place where you taught a class before, or when you did cover and the person was really rude to you and made you feel awful? What are the experiences that you've had? But as you said, Gina, it's there that we have to take the action, and the action that we take is what reinforces, is this a threat, which is freeze, fight, flight, or is this an opportunity? And so if we can, when we're going through that moment of context, if we can to granulate the emotion that the feeling that we're getting and label it, that helps take out the sting and will help us choose something that can make it feel less threatening. And then that brings it back to Karen, how you can reinforce something that's positive. So Gina, if you go, oh my goodness, I've got these buttons in my stomach, I'm nervous, I'm not going to do the class, then what you've done is you've reinforced that the action that you take led to the feeling that was negative, freeze, flight, or flight. And then if we do that, what happens, the feed up, and that's what starts to give us the experience. And this is where the central nervous system starts to actions that you take. And that's why it's really important to step into that stage. And that's what you were saying, Sabrina, to step into that stage and go, well, rather than reinforcing that this is dangerous, we can take a step and go, maybe if you're like petrified of doing a class, for example, a positive action might be to teach with somebody, and then makes it a little bit easier. And then you don't get that fear, and then maybe you go and teach on your own, because positive action to it. But if you go, I'm not going back, I'm never covering again, what you've done is you've reinforced the fear in that, the danger in that, if that makes sense. And it's taking those steps of reinforcing. And this is what we do for the opportunity. If they come in and they say, oh, that hurts, pain is a feeling, and so they've had that. But at that moment where they go into context of it hurts when my leg goes forward, for example, in a lunge, we might say, what I want you to do is to take your leg back and do a reverse lunge. And then what we can do is show them a video of them doing that movement, and they get to reinforce and see that, oh, my leg was in the same position as it goes forwards. Biomechanically, it's doing exactly the same thing. And so then we are putting in a step that reinforces something that's positive. And that can be taken, everything we do, as if anybody wants to jump in, feel free. But there's a little story about a patient specialist, and that is, if you go into a house and it's a dark house and it's on an alley, and crept in us, and you're hiding, playing hide and seek, and it's Halloween, and all of a sudden you hear it upstairs, and you obviously go, that's an axe murderer. And with that, you decide to run out of the house as quickly as possible. So the act you took to the trigger of the noise, the emotion, was freeze, flight, and flight, and you ran out of there. So you reinforced that that was a threat. Then the next day, you go to get into the car, but you're on the road that leads to the house that has the axe murderer in it. So you decide you're not going to get the car and go in that direction. You're going to go in a different direction. But the next day, you get in your car and you now know that that car leads to the road that leads to the street opposite to where the house is. So each time it starts to get more threatening. And that's when we're giving power to this feeling. Whereas rather than giving it power, if we go, there's a noise upstairs in the cupboard, we could put on a light and grab a friend and we could creep upstairs and we can open the cupboard and we find it's not a mass murderer, a cat. And the cat jumps out and we suddenly go, not mass murderer after all. And everything feels so much better because we had that strategy in place. And from everything that I was looking at, imposter syndrome is a way of labeling and expressing. So if we go, well, actually, that's just with our limited way of using language and vocabulary, it's just a description of a series of feelings. Now we get to own it because the power out of it that doesn't help us with opportunities, and we can reframe, we can start to take actions and simple steps to make it more of a less threatening and more of an opportunity. Does anybody else have anything? Because I'm talking too much because I'm on the end of the day and I've just had my coffee.
No, it's interesting because I as I said, I hadn't heard what's going on, and I don't know if I thought about strategies. I just did what I needed to do, so I didn't miss opportunity. So I think it's really interesting to think about what you're saying, just to take the sting out of something, and finding those ways is got to be a better way of doing it. Because also do things, things like that they, down by the coast and they don't want to get in anymore. And, it's not just fitness, it's in so many aspects of our life. And if you can, a strategy to turn it around, I mean, there's nothing better than being able to do it yourself, so really interesting. Yeah. Not giving someone too much airtime, about myself, obviously, but even though I'm on this panel, I just think it's useful to kind of stop and think about what it is. So, because everything is about how you react to it. Something happens in front of you, what do you do next? It's yeah.
And I think also, oh, sorry, Carol.
No,
also, sometimes you don't know why you've got the imposter in that sense of, well, what am I actually of? Like, why am I the imposter? Is it this aspect of like, I don't know my choreography, I don't know how to I don't know how to plan a program for my clients, I don't know how to tell my staff to get on with the work that they're doing. Like, what section of the imposter syndrome do you recognize and think, okay, so what do I need to change to maybe not feel like that? Or recognize, like you say, Joe, what feeling that makes you feel like that? So if I was to say, okay, so why do I feel like an imposter, like I've got imposter syndrome? I think a lot of it can be comparison. Sometimes you compare yourself to other people. Sometimes, well, I'm not good enough. But then it's like, well, no, but my classes are full. People love my classes. I still feel like that I'm a bit of an imposter in like what I do in my work life and stuff. It's just, how do I look at the section that I feel that I'm not good at? That makes sense.
I think what's great that is also reasons in that rage at that moment, or they're having a tantrum, then you know, or if somebody's had too much alcohol and you're trying to reason with them, and it's like that, you can't get there because right at that moment they are in it. But if you look back at it afterwards and you do write it down and you assess it, that's part as well of taking the sting out. And if you can say, oh, you know, am I doing everything that I can to prepare? And I think because we've got lots of mixed information, lots of mixed messages out there, lots of different gurus. And I think one of the greatest things about Faster Health and Fitness is that you're always given the tools to go and look at the research yourself so that you can have that process, and that gives you over the decision that you make, and having those that ability to put that process in every single step of the way, but also acknowledging that we're all doing our best, and you can only do the best you at that time that you're in the situation.
I would actually add to professionals or people that are on magazine, or they're really popular, everything look easy. And because of this, there's a myth that comes along with everything being effortless, and you don't hard to achieve it. You see just these successful people that got lucky, so to speak. And so I think it's really important in some of those cases to practice self-compassion, realize, like you were saying, Joanne, you're here. How do you get to here? Have compassion with that and recognize it as a growth journey. And there's a lot of small steps you can take to get to that bigger goal. And some of those things would be like reframing, like we've mentioned, and self, because those are just as important as the bigger ones. And embracing everything as a learning process. If you fail, look at that for, you know, what can I take from this situation, and learn, rather than labeling it as a
I love what Sir Winston Churchill says. Success is going from one failure without losing enthusiasm.
Yes.
I think that's awesome. And what you're really saying there as well is trying to build a growth mindset and enjoying that process rather than just the outcome. Definitely. When it came to Orla with body, again, is really important to know that our bodies come in all shapes and sizes, and it certainly isn't what makes you a good trainer or not. And I think what everybody has brought today is empathy and that ability to be able to see other people and hold space for you as you are. And I think it's not always easy for different generations to express that they were brought up with different contexts. But if conversations like this and change that narrative, I think can be helpful. That's my hope. I remember
I would also like add to what Gina was saying, you know, that you are feeling still at the syndrome, and then when my classes are, so you're trying where it comes from. And I think first it can come from different places to different people. Maybe, for example, something you were told as a child, so you have insecurity on a certain aspect of your life. But also for me, one of the things that helped me the most, because I think I used to feel it a lot at the beginning, is just accepting that it's okay if not everybody likes me. Because sometimes I would have 25 people in my class, 24 were super happy, and one would complain about one thing. Maybe they didn't like the music, or they didn't like this, or they didn't like this new routine. And I would totally focus on this one person. I was like, wait, 24 told me it was brilliant. Why am I like obsessing about the one? So I just started to accept that, okay, maybe my class is hard, and that's fine, because it's fully booked every week. So there's always going to be somebody that you are right for. You don't have to be right for everybody. And again, for what Ola was saying, you will have, because of your whole life experience, you have that to offer to clients that are going to really relate to you. So I think anything that we think is a weakness can really be turned into strength.
100%.
That's my 10 cents.
I love it. I love it is reassessing it. And even if you couldn't sit, having that is phenomenal. If anybody does do classes, speaking, even was take a photo of the compliments you get given and write them down and have them in a book and look at them every now and again, just to the journey that you're going through and have compassion for yourselves. I'm not very good at that. Horse riding as a kid, I used to be fine in the jumping the jumps and stuff. And then as soon as my dad would turn up, I'd literally get a fence. It was classic. And then I had to say to myself, why do I care so much? But it's been really super interesting hearing everybody's experience had to offer. What are your biggest takeaways, or is there anything you're going to do differently? What from this call, maybe that we've all had these similar experiences, which is just nice to.
I think that every single person, even whoever you see that's at the top of their field, feels insecure about something. Everybody does. So we all share that experience. So I think it's a good thing to remember when you're feeling it and just think, actually, we all are in the same experience. It's the same for all of us. So I think then suddenly don't feel so awkward and alone and thinking you're doing everything wrong. It's like, no, actually everybody goes through this kind of feeling. And it's because we care so much about what we do.
Absolutely.
Also, it has to do like once I have insecure full-time job, for example. I recently applied to a full-time job at one of the places that I teach fitness classes. And I actually went through the phase 1 of interview, but I did go through phase number 2. And I think this is the very first time I applied to a full-time job coordinator. So I realized like when you're insecure and you face your insecurities, like you overcome the anxiety and stuff, then you build confidence in yourself. Once you build that confidence, it's a momentum they had to keep going. And when I got rejected, I knew like I wasn't in a way. But then I realized it's actually their loss, not mine. Notice like some of the mistakes that they're doing at the workplace that I can do, like that I can do better. So don't take it like internally, but take it like as an external. It's not about me, it's about them. When you have that side, and I for me, what helped me was going through therapy, like working on my healing and working on it was helpful.
Thank you for sharing that, Orla. And I don't want to keep you on a work. Was today useful?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. It was good to hear. It's just to kind of, well, a nice way of talking about stuff and certain things to you. So,
Well, I know
yeah.
you recently went to another talk about imposter syndrome, didn't you?
Actually, yeah. But he wasn't giving you any strategies at all, not ways to kind of that actually. It was, yeah, there wasn't anything really that I could. I know that sounds a little bit vague, but there was nothing like we're talking about now. With nothing talking about, how you get a trigger emotion, it's a feeling, and how you can kind of, so that's strategies. This was more about just selling the product, I think. In other words, somebody else doing it for you. So, and a lot of other things, but that's another story. That's from, but yeah, always getting people to do things for you. You never really learn that much, So, but yes, thank you.
I think they were in preparation, if it is those types of things and is taking out the sting, granulating, see if you can break down that emotion. Because if it's anxiety, it's a big block. But if we can knock that out a little bit and it breaks into little pebbles, they're more manageable. That type of thing. My hope that that's helpful. And I know some people, International Women's Day is corporate thing, but yes, every day is a Women's Day, but women have had to fight to have their voice, and they're still.
How is Everyday Women's Day?
Exactly. But this is it. Some people don't, but I think that it is nice to see each supporting each other and being here for each other. That bond and helps us feel less alone. And I'm getting all on my soapbox here, but there are some women that have to fight very, very hard to have their voice heard within a family. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Joe, for creating these spaces for us to support each other and share, because you always make it feel super safe to just say whether it's right or wrong, So thank you so much for creating.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone. Thank you.